yeah, I know what you're all going to say. Why stress out over this horrible AI generated content? We know we're not like that. Why not just ignore it? Yeah, that would be the easy way to go. But the thing is, there's all these American channels on YouTube who do reaction videos to videos about Australia. Sooner or later, this video is going to hit the channel of someone who's got thousands and thousands of subscribers, and they're going to look at it and they're going to think, wow, is this real? So I want to get in first and tear this person to shreds, basically. I'm actually going into this cold, so I don't know what I'm looking at. All I've looked at is I've scrolled through the actual video to see which cities were spoken about in the video. Thankfully, they didn't say Hobart this time because I probably would have just lost the plot completely. But yeah, the whole point of this is I am going to react to this video. I'm going to do a raw reaction. In other words, I've not watched any of it whatsoever. And I'll just see how I go with it. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is that when I look at that thumbnail that they used for that video, I'm sorry, but by the things that that lady is wearing, she's not even Australian. They've used a thumbnail image of someone who looks like they're from America. Just my observation. So, straight up, and you know, you look at the thumbnail, that is straight up designed to. It's clickbait. That's all it is. Sheer clickbait. Someone has got it in their head that they really dislike America, and now all of a sudden they're putting out all these nasty videos. This is actually that State Seeker channel, which I actually did a reaction to last week with another one of their really negative videos about Australia. So the other reason why I'm doing this reaction is those of you who feel passionate about this, I will have the link below for the original video, and I encourage as many of you who feel the need to hop across to this channel, report the video and report the channel, because perhaps if we can get as many people as possible reporting the video and reporting the channel, at the very least, then the video and the channel will hopefully be shadow banned, meaning that scrolling through, there's a very slim chance of other people seeing it. It'll just be hidden away in the background of YouTube. But also, it may eventually squash the channel completely. Of course, idiots like this tend to, when their channel is squashed, they just come back with another channel elsewhere. So that is one of the crappy things about people like this. But while my channel exists, I am going to continue to call out idiots like this because it really gets my goat. So let's jump in and see what this moron has to say.
Australia is famous for its laid-back vibe, beautiful beaches, and friendly locals, right? Well, not always. While the land down under is known for its relaxed lifestyle and stunning landscapes, not every city lives up to the friendly Aussie stereotype. In fact, some of the country's biggest and most bustling cities have developed a reputation for being, well, a little on the rude side. But what does rude really mean? For some, it's the cold shoulder from a busy local, while for others, it might be the frantic pace of city life that makes people seem rushed or unapproachable. If you've ever been ignored when asking for directions, dealt with road rage and gridlock traffic, or felt like a stranger in a new city, you're not alone. So which Australian cities top the list for having the worst manners? And do they truly deserve the title of being the rudest in the country? In this video, we're counting down the top 5 rudest cities in Australia. uncovering why these places have earned their tough reputations and whether it's really rudeness or just big city stress getting the best of people. From Sydney's frantic pace to Melbourne's cool aloofness, you might be surprised which cities make the cut. Stick around as we dive deep into what really makes a city seem rude and see if you agree with the rankings.
So, straight up, we have a person who is too gutless to put their own voice to the video. Instead, they're using an AI generated voice. Chances are, going by their last video, they're also using AI generated content, or they have just straight outright plagiarized it from some not so great website. Now, I want to point out that this is a hateful video. This is giving the impression that if you go to these places in Australia, then they are rude. But let's call a spade a spade. Even if there are rude people in whatever these cities are that they are talking about, still, they're going to be way streets ahead of so many cities in the United States. Now, I know there are some really lovely people in the United States. I have some friends who are in the United States who are lovely people. But at the same time, there are some really rude people in the United States. I've seen it in the comments section of my videos here. The moment I do a video that has anything to do with America, you start getting people coming in and they start being rude. My other channel has a very high number of American subscribers, and every now and then you see these nasty trolls that come in who just take offence because I'm Australian, basically. So, you know, calling a spade, let's be real, compared to the rest of the world, even if someone believes Australia is rude, we really don't rate.
Number 5, Adelaide, South Australia. Adelaide, the capital of South Australia, often flies under the radar when compared to Australia's bigger cities like Sydney and Melbourne. Known for its laid-back charm and beautiful vineyards, you'd expect Adelaide to be one of the friendliest places in the country. But for some visitors, this quiet city can feel anything but warm and welcoming. Many describe Adelaide as a city that's distant and reserved, where locals are polite, but not particularly friendly. It's the kind of place where small talk is rare, and strangers won't go out of their way to make you feel at home. If you're not from Adelaide, you might notice a sense of exclusion, like you're an outsider looking in. Tourists and even new residents often speak about feeling like they don't quite fit in, as though the city's calm exterior hides an invisible wall. While Adelaide might not have the same in-your-face attitude as Sydney or Melbourne, this sense of coldness can be just as off-putting. Some blame it on the slower pace of life, where the lack of hustle and bustle makes people more introverted, even a bit standoffish. Others say it's simply a reflection of Adelaide's smaller, tightly knit community, where locals stick to their own circles and can be hesitant to welcome newcomers. For anyone expecting the outgoing friendliness Australia's known for, Adelaide can feel like a disappointment. It's a city that may not outright offend you, but can leave you feeling isolated and disconnected, making it an unexpected contender for one of the rudest cities in the country. Does Adelaide really deserve this reputation? That depends on who you ask, but for many, the emotional chill is hard to ignore.
So, I've only ever heard Adelaide being described as being a laid back, relaxed, friendly place. So, this tosser is trying to say that people are standoffish. I think the overarching theme for this entire video, something we need to consider, is that Australians will treat you as you treat them. So if you are rude to an Australian, they might not necessarily be rude back. We can be fairly tolerant individuals, but we will be quite cordial with you. and we're not going to continue the conversation with you. So if that is considered rude, well and good. Now, I will say I've heard that Adelaide drivers can be a little bit aggressive, so perhaps that is one factor. But at the same time, you know, drivers in every state have got a downside. I think I would consider Tassie drivers to be the rudest drivers that I've encountered, but I've never actually been to South Australia, so I'm not qualified to comment on any of that. But it sounds like this person has just come up with a bunch of hateful things to say about Adelaide, bunched them all together and gone, hey, here you go, number 5, hated city.
Number 4, Perth, Western Australia. Perth, the capital of Western Australia, is known for its stunning beaches, endless sunshine, and being one of the most isolated major cities in the world. But with that isolation comes a downside. Many visitors and even locals describe Perth as feeling distant, not just geographically, but emotionally as well. It's often referred to as a place where people are physically present, but mentally checked out, giving the city a reputation for being cold and unwelcoming. Unlike the fast-paced chaos of Sydney or Melbourne, Perth's laid-back lifestyle can create an odd sense of disconnection. Tourists and newcomers have often shared stories of trying to strike up conversations, only to be met with blank stares or half-hearted replies. Many people describe it as a city where it's hard to break into social circles, like everyone already has their group and isn't interested in welcoming someone new. Some believe Perth's remoteness contributes to this sense of aloofness. Being thousands of kilometers away from Australia's other major cities, Perth can feel cut off from the rest of the country, which may lead to a more insular attitude among its residents. Locals are often seen as keeping to themselves, going about their day without much regard for outsiders. Even though Perth's beauty is undeniable, the emotional distance can make it a tough place to feel at home. Visitors expecting the stereotypical Aussie friendliness might be surprised to find a city that, while stunning, feels closed off and indifferent. Is Perth rude or just misunderstood? Either way, the feeling of being emotionally disconnected is enough to land it on our list. For many, the city's calm exterior hides a social frostiness that leaves a lasting impression, one that isn't always a positive one.
So it seems like this creator tries to find a theme that they use in each of their videos. And to me, it seems like the theme here is that the people in these cities are aloof and they're frosty and they won't talk to you if you approach them. They're just going to look at you. Now, I can't imagine that ever happening anywhere in Australia. I've never been to Western Australia, but if you saw a video that I put out a number of weeks ago, which was a review of a couple called Jack and Megan, and they are a couple from Perth, Western Australia, who are the sweetest, friendliest, kindest people that you could imagine. And they are a little bit introverted. They do struggle with anxiety at sometimes, but they are certainly not what you would consider rude. And from watching some of their more recent videos now that they're travelling out with their new caravan, a lot of people are approaching them because their caravan really stands out because it is so different and so unique. And they're loving having the conversations with people who approach them and want to compliment them on their caravan and everything. So, if that's what people from Perth are like, that's not rude. Not in the least bit. I would love to hear from people who've been to Perth or from people who live in Perth to hear your take on it, but it sounds like this guy has basically picked a theme for his video and he's going to flog that theme throughout.
Number 3, Brisbane, Queensland. Brisbane, the sunny capital of Queensland, is often promoted as one of Australia's friendliest cities, where the weather is warm and so are the people. But for some, Brisbane's charm hides a different reality, a city that can be friendly on the surface but cold and indifferent underneath. Many visitors and even some residents have found Brisbane to be a place where the friendliness feels performative, leaving them feeling excluded or overlooked.
Okay, so it seems like I am once again correct. And he is using the theme. But not only that, it seems like he's basically saying exactly the same thing for each one of these cities. He's just slightly rewording it, but he's not coming up with anything original. There is nothing solid here. No examples of what he's saying. It's just airy fairy crap. So I'm gonna basically fast forward through what he's saying about Brisbane. I've been to Brisbane. I thought it was a lovely place. I certainly didn't find people rude there. And I know I've got subscribers who are from Brisbane, so feel free to jump in and leave your own thoughts because what a joke.
Once they scratch beneath the surface. On the outside, Brisbaneites often appear welcoming and laid back, but this hospitality doesn't always extend to everyone. For tourists and newcomers, there can be a sense that the friendliness only goes skin deep, especially if you're not a part of the local community. Some describe encounters where locals seem polite but distant, as if they were going through the motions without any genuine interest. This can lead to an unsettling feeling, where you're not quite sure if you've truly been welcomed or just tolerated. Brisbane's social scene can also feel cliquey, with tight-knit groups that don't always open up to outsiders. Whether you're a tourist or a new resident, it can be difficult to find your footing, especially if you're expecting the open, easygoing vibe that Queensland is known for. The city's fast-growing population may also contribute to this, as many locals feel the impact of increased tourism and rapid development, leading to shorter tempers and a less patient attitude toward visitors. Beneath Brisbane's sunny exterior lies a city that, for some, can feel emotionally distant and indifferent. While it may not be as aggressively rude as other cities on this list, the subtle sense of exclusion and lack of genuine warmth is enough to leave a lasting impression, and not always a positive one.
Number 2, Melbourne. Victoria, Melbourne, the cultural capital of Australia, is famous for its thriving art scene, world-class coffee culture, and trendy cosmopolitan vibe. But behind this sophisticated exterior lies a city that many find unapproachable, even aloof. While Melburnians are often proud of their city's reputation as the cool hub of Australia, this sense of coolness can sometimes translate into a social coldness that leaves visitors feeling ignored or out of place. For newcomers and tourists, Melbourne can be a tough nut to crack. Locals tend to keep to themselves, and while they may be polite, they aren't exactly known for being warm or inviting. Many visitors report feeling as though they're invisible, blending into the background of a city that seems too wrapped up in its own cultural superiority to pay attention to outsiders. Whether it's in a bustling cafe or on the tram, striking up a conversation in Melbourne can feel like a challenge.
So it's all the same stuff yet again. That whole, oh, well, they're not going to talk to you. You're going to be feeling a little bit isolated. You're the outsider, yada, yada, yada. Now, I'm not from Melbourne. I'm in Bendigo, which is a 2.5 hour drive from Melbourne. And I'm going to share a story from my last trip down to Melbourne, which was when I went down a week or so back to check out the Pharaoh exhibition at the National Gallery. Now, a bit over 12 months ago, I had a major operation on one of my ankles. So when I go somewhere where I have to do a lot of walking, I do actually need to use a cane. Now, the exhibition was utterly brilliant, and it was spread through several rooms on either side of the main foyer. For me, this was utterly brilliant because it meant that I could do the first part of the go through the first part of the exhibition, sit down, rest my foot for 10 minutes, and then do the second part of the exhibition. And while I was sitting there, because my foot was really throbbing, I actually had it up, sort of, I didn't have my shoe or anything on the seat, but I had my leg rested on the seat with my foot hanging out over the side. And I had some really lovely people just come and randomly chat with me. People from Melbourne and people who were not the least bit upset about me taking up space for two people on the seat. Joking about, oh, they need little buffets for people to put their feet on. And I went, oh, look, I can put my foot down if you need to sit down. They're like, no, that's fine. And I had some really nice conversations with people during the periods of times that I was sitting there. So I sat there initially before going on to the second half of the exhibition, and the people I was with were taking a bit more time going through. So when I had finished, I met them back there at the seat, so I was sitting there for a bit longer as well. And, I didn't feel isolated. I didn't feel ignored. I felt like there were quite a lot of people who wanted to just strike up a conversation. So, that's just one small example. Um, yeah, people are busy and bustling in Melbourne, and you do get that sense almost of overwhelm in terms of it is quite crowded around the train stations and that. So, and people are on a mission. They're headed somewhere, so they're not going to just randomly stop and have a conversation with you. But I certainly wouldn't consider it to be rude.
Almost as if people are too busy or too cool to engage with someone they don't know. Melbourne's obsession with being at the cutting edge of fashion, art, and food also contributes to its reputation for being snobby. The city's famous laneways, hidden bars, and exclusive cultural spots can feel intimidating for those who aren't in the know. This sense of exclusivity, while appealing to locals, often alienates visitors, making them feel unwelcome in what can appear to be an insular and elitist environment.
Now, it's interesting that he says that because I've seen so many travel videos where people who've come from overseas and they're doing a trip around Australia, find those little side alleys and stuff in Melbourne reminiscent of places in Asia, and they really, really like that whole atmosphere and that setup. So I really don't know where this guy's getting his information from, but it's a joke.
Even though Melbourne is undeniably vibrant and exciting, its emotional distance is hard to ignore. For some, the city's cool factor comes with a sense of superiority that makes it difficult to connect with the people. It's a city that prides itself on being cutting edge, but in the process can leave many feeling cold and uninvited, earning it the number 2 spot on our list.
Number 1. Sydney, New South Wales. Sydney, Australia's largest and most iconic city, is known for its stunning harbor, world-famous landmarks, and high-energy vibe. But behind the postcard-perfect images of the Sydney Opera House and Bondi Beach lies a city that's often labeled as the rudest in the country. For many, Sydney's fast-paced, high-pressure lifestyle creates an environment where people are more focused on getting ahead than being friendly, making it the most unforgiving city in Australia. In Sydney, it's easy to feel like just another face in the crowd. With over 5 million residents, the city is constantly buzzing with activity, and the hustle of daily life can feel overwhelming. Locals are often perceived as rushed, stressed, and too busy to offer a smile or even acknowledge a stranger. For tourists and newcomers, this can create a sense of isolation, as if they're being swept aside by the city's relentless drive.
Really, all this dude has done has basically created one singular script that is then reworded for each one of these 5 cities to come out with the impression that they are rude. There's nothing here, there's nothing concrete in what he's saying, and it's just designed to cause hatred, basically. This is some itty bitty little person who clearly has an inferiority complex and perhaps is jealous of Australia or something, or resentful because Australia is a laid back, friendly country. And so they are creating these videos attacking Australia. The only rudeness I can find in this video is this individual. I will say, sorry guys, but Sydney drivers can be rude. That is probably one thing I would say. I find it incredibly stressful driving through Sydney. But I think at the same time, that's because every other driver probably finds it stressful driving through Sydney. So it's kind of every man for himself. But, I guess that's a big city thing. You're going to find that everywhere. It's still got to be better than somewhere like LA or New York or whatever. So I'm really unimpressed with this video, as you can tell by me basically speeding up the audio, not even bothering to keep the pitch the same, just speeding it up and speeding through, because they have basically chosen a theme of these cities are rude because people aren't going to talk to you, people are going to treat you like an outsider, and people are aloof. That is basically an insular. That is basically the theme that they have used throughout this entire video. And it's just a load of rot. So feel free to click on the link that I've put in the description and go across and hit the dislike button on this video or report the actual video. Also feel free to go across and report the channel, because all it is someone who's clearly got no life creating videos that are creating hatred about Australia, that are inaccurate, and this sort of crap shouldn't even be on YouTube. I will just skip through the last part of the video for anyone who's interested. I will speed it up again, but I think we know what's going to be said because it seems like I've said the same thing throughout. So if you like my content, please hit the like button, please subscribe, and please leave a comment below. What do you think of these cities that have been discussed in this video? Do you consider the people who live there as being rude? What are your thoughts overall on this video?
Whether it's fighting for a seat on a packed train or navigating the notoriously bad traffic, Sydney can be an emotionally draining place where common courtesy sometimes takes a back seat to the daily grind. Sydney's reputation for being cutthroat doesn't stop at the streets. It also extends into social interactions. Some visitors describe the people here as cold or even rude, with little time for small talk or casual friendliness. The competitive nature of the city, driven by high costs of living and demanding jobs, often leaves residents with little patience for slowing down or engaging with strangers. If you're not moving at Sydney's breakneck pace, it can feel like the city is pushing you aside. Despite its incredible beauty and global appeal, Sydney's emotional coldness can leave a lasting impression. It's a city that, while breathtaking, is often seen as unwelcoming and even unfriendly, securing its place as the rudest city in Australia. At the end of the day, the perception of a rude city often comes down to personal experience. What one person sees as cold or unfriendly, another might view as the fast-paced realities of urban life. Whether it's Sydney's intense hustle, Melbourne's aloof coolness, or Perth's isolation, these cities all have their unique quirks that can be misinterpreted as rudeness. In truth, big cities often come with big personalities, and it's easy to feel lost in the crowd or excluded if you're not familiar with the local way of life. But does that mean these cities are truly rude, or is it just the natural side effect of living in large, competitive urban environments? Many locals would argue it's the latter. Beneath the surface, you might find that people are just as kind and welcoming as anywhere else. You just have to dig a little deeper to see it. Ultimately, whether you experience warmth or coldness in these cities may depend on your own perspective and how you engage with the people and culture around you. Have you ever been to any of these cities? Did you find them rude, or did you have a completely different experience? Let us know in the comments below.
Okay, this is like one of those cookies that you get at the end of the movie if you sit right through all the credits and then you get something at the end. He's sort of redeemed himself a bit here, but to be honest, my thoughts are that the only reason he's said that is because he probably has been attacked on his other videos by Australians getting really, really upset over the nastiness directed towards our country. So if you have made it right through to the end, thank you. I know a lot of people probably tuned out at me sort of doing the final talk, so I appreciate anyone who has actually watched right through to the end, because that definitely helps me keep this video moving in the algorithm. Thank you, and I'll catch you on the next one.